The man with one of the most difficult political jobs in the world, shaking hands with a modern-day dictator. Zimbabwe's opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai is sworn in as Prime Minister in a unity government with President Robert Mugabe. A temporary marriage of convenience or a permanent fix for a wrecked country? What are the challenges for Zimbabwe now? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Jane Dutton. Ending the political deadlock in Zimbabwe, or just adding another chapter to the turmoil. On Wednesday, the former opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai was sworn in as the Prime Minister of Zimbabwe by his arch-rival, President Robert Mugabe. Harumatasa reports on the power-sharing deal between the two men.
Ever since the contested elections in 2008, both the Tsvangirai-led MDC and the ruling ZANU-PF have been locked in bitter negotiations, both believing they have the right to rule. Now a shaky compromise might offer some hope for Zimbabweans who have endured poverty, devastating disease and political violence under President Mugabe's rule. Both sides will have key roles in this unity government. If I use this game to explain to you how things are going to work, Robert Mugabe, represented by the blue player over there, remains the president, and Morgan Tsvangirai, represented by the red player over here, comes in as the Prime Minister. Key ministerial roles have been a sticking point. MDC will get the Ministry of Finance, led by Tendai Biti, and the Health Ministry, led by Dr. Henry Madore. Crucial roles at a time when primary care has collapsed. The country is reeling from the worst cholera outbreak in recorded history, and the economy is in meltdown. But ZANU-PF could keep control of national finances by keeping Reserve Bank Governor Gideon Gono in office, and they keep a grip on the media by controlling the Information Ministry. Perhaps the most important role is Home Affairs, the office that controls the police. This position will be shared on the one side by MDC's Giles Mutsekwa, a former soldier and political strongman. He will share that position with someone from ZANU-PF. Since the ruling party has used the police to intimidate the population and arrest political adversaries, many of whom are still under detention, it remains to be seen how willing ZANU-PF will be to actually share this position. Despite the elections and the negotiations and the complicated arrangements to make this government work, one thing hasn't changed. Robert Mugabe is still president, and with his veto, can change the rules of the game whenever he likes. Harumatasa, Al Jazeera, Harare.
And Haru joins us live now from Harare. Haru, what are the developments on the political front that we can look forward to?
Well, Jane, basically the politicians are going to be sworn in on Friday. The ministers will be sworn in on Friday at the State House. That's what people are preparing for. And then they're going to have a series of meetings ahead of next week when it's a brand new week, they'll officially start office and try to hammer out a solution out of the humanitarian crisis Zimbabwe is in. People are hoping something comes out of it, and they hope that these leaders, both from the opposition MDC and ZANU-PF, can actually work together and make things work.
There is a lot of uncertainty as to whether or not this deal is going to work. You gave us a sense there, but tell us how this is playing out on the streets. What are people saying to you?
Well, they're mixed feelings. There's a group of people who are very optimistic, who are saying this is better than nothing. Rather, Morgan Tsvangirai, the Prime Minister, fights the system from within. But there are a lot of skeptics as well, people saying that it's too early to tell. Let's wait a bit, see how things pan out, see if President Mugabe is willing to work with the Prime Minister, see if they can actually form one united force. Now, I've been speaking to people on the streets, and I've asked them whether they think the new Prime Minister is the right man of the job, right man for the job, and this is what they had to say.
Yeah, to a great extent, you managed to overcome the situation, provided that he is given chance by the ruling party, the ZANU-PF, to express or to act towards his objectives.
Yes, he's the right man for the job, because he's man of the people. People want him. Everybody is looking for him to deliver the right things. He promised us to deliver before the elections.
This country, in short, has been paralyzed. So he's trying to retrieve somebody from death. That is Zimbabwe. He can only do that if he's given enough room to maneuver.
Harumatasa talking to locals in the capital, but joining us to talk more about this in Johannesburg, Sox Chikawero. He's a member of the MDC Veterans Activists Association. and was formerly the MDC's National Director of Intelligence. In London, George Sherry, he's a political analyst and a veteran from the Zimbabwean War of Liberation. And in Leeds, Lionel Cliff, he's a professor of politics at the University of Leeds. Mr. Sherry, do you think the ZANU-PF party will be happy to tell those Zimbabweans who've been expressing their concerns that everything will change under this new unity government, despite the fact that Robert Mugabe is still in power?
Well, some of the time it's not the question, it's not the answer one gives, it's the question one poses. The issue in Zimbabwe now is what defines, what dominates the political terrain. And what dominates political terrain in Zimbabwe now is enshrined in the memorandum of understanding that preceded the signing of the agreement. Within that is the consolidation of the land question. Within that, never mind the sort of tidying up bits and pieces in there. And once that is consolidated, everything goes into place. And it's also taking place at the same time in which the fantasy, if I may use that word, people had to return to kind of market economic policies has disappeared. And the argument people have that somehow they see individual ministries being driven by individual political parties is not going to happen. So what you see is the end of, if you like, the Lancaster House chapter into finishing what has been a century-long argument about the land question.
Now, what seems to dominate more than anything, despite those points you make, is Robert Mugabe. He's dominated for over 28 years. He still dominates this government. So what I want to know is what difference is it going to make with Robert Mugabe still in power?
I think that's what I'm leading to. I think by being obsessed with the character of Robert Mugabe, we miss the point about what are the dominant issues in Zimbabwe politics. I think that's
easily understood. He's ruled the country with an iron fist for so long.
If I could finish.
To its peril.
If I could finish. In the Memorandum of Understanding, in the 15th of September deal, all political parties in Zimbabwe recognize Robert Mugabe as head of state and head of government. You cannot, it is not possible to arrive at a solution in Zimbabwe, whichever way you look at it, which does not include Robert Mugabe. That's
well, I mean, Robert Mugabe should have stood down when he was voted out last year, but he didn't do that. Let me bring in Mr. Chikowero there. How do you think the MDC can work alongside Robert Mugabe? I mean, has he changed?
Well, I think what I need to point out clearly here is the newcomers who are coming into government have got the biggest challenge. And that challenge is they've come into a stolen deal. Robert Mugabe and ZANU-PF have been stealing elections since 2000, and they've gone ahead to steal the deal with the help of Thabo Mbeki, the former president of South Africa, and the SADC. And as we were waiting to see the sewing in of the Prime Minister yesterday, we saw that it was Robert Mugabe who saw in the Prime Minister instead of the Chief Justice. That alone, it shows that Mugabe is still in control. It shows that nothing has changed. However, we applaud the Prime Minister to agree to go into the battlefield now instead of fighting from outside the battlefield. But well, the challenge
I mean, as you say, let me just pick you up on that point that nothing has changed. If nothing has changed, surely Tsvangirai has sold out.
No. We cannot say it's sold out. But what we are saying is Tsvangirai have been fighting this battle from outside the battlefield. Now he has gone inside the battlefield to try and fight the corruption within ZANU-PF, to try and fight the human rights abuses by ZANU-PF, to try and fight the killings, the rapings, and all the unnecessary things which was taking place in the ZANU-PF government ever since 1980. So nothing as it is, nothing has changed. So it is up to Morgan and his team now to make sure that those things change. Now he's in the battlefield.
Okay, Mr. Cliff, do you think there was any other way for this to go forward?
I don't think so. The people may have an ideal solution, but in terms of what was possible, I think both sides, in a way, were operating from situations of partial weakness and from a position where things weren't necessarily going to get better for them. And this is at least a formula to move the discussions and the struggles onto new terrain and new kinds of issues. We will have to wait to see what the outcomes are. But what is true is that we're now operating in a different situation, but it'll be one where there will continue to be political conflict.
Isn't the problem here, Mr. Cliff, isn't the problem here that this deal has given Robert Mugabe the power to go ahead with his repressive regime under the veneer of a unity government?
That might be the outcome, but I don't think it's necessarily so. Constitutionally, there is some element of power for the MDC over the security apparatus. They share the Home Office. This week there's been a law passed to create a National Security Council, which will be a joint operation. But also, the realities of power aren't only to do with the security apparatus, they're to do with, as with any state, the ability to influence and control and shape the direction of the economy and society.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the problems facing Zimbabwe and the challenges. We'll do that after the short break. We'll also look deeper into what the new Prime Minister is going to face and the role of the international community in getting Zimbabwe back on its feet. Do stay with us.